Emily didn't realize she was slowly hurting Daniel, not with anger, not with insults, just with small sentences people say every day. Sentences like, "Why can't you ever do this properly?" The strange part was that Daniel never argued back. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't defend himself. Over time, he simply became quieter. Emily and Daniel had been together for 6 years, the kind of relationship that looked stable from the outside. A small apartment, a golden retriever named Milo, Sunday grocery runs, shared Netflix accounts, and familiar routines. Emily used to love the small things about Daniel, the way he laughed too loudly at his own jokes, the way he always tried to fix things himself even when he clearly didn't know how. Once, years ago, when Emily had the flu, Daniel drove through a snowstorm just to bring her soup. He spilled half of it on the car seat and kept apologizing the whole time. Emily had laughed and kissed his cheek. Back then, she never noticed the mess. All she noticed was the effort. But somewhere along the way, Emily had started noticing Daniel's imperfections more than his effort. That evening, Emily came home from work exhausted. Her day had been long, meetings that should have been emails, deadlines that kept moving closer. When she walked into the apartment, Daniel was in the kitchen making dinner. The smell of garlic filled the room. The counter was messy, sauce splattered near the stove, a cutting board crowded with half-chopped vegetables. Emily stopped at the doorway and sighed. "Daniel, why do you always cook like this?" she said. "You know I hate when the kitchen looks like a disaster." Daniel stopped stirring the pasta. For a moment, he didn't say anything. Then he grabbed a towel and quietly wiped the counter. "I was just trying to make dinner before you got home," he said. The rest of the evening wasn't angry, just slightly distant. The next afternoon, Emily met 2 of her friends for coffee. While they talked about work and life, Emily mentioned the argument casually. "Daniel cooked again yesterday," she said with a tired laugh. "And of course the kitchen looked like a tornado hit it." Her friends looked at each other. Then one of them raised an eyebrow. "Wait, Daniel cooks dinner for you?" Emily shrugged. "Yeah, sometimes." Her friend leaned forward. "Emily, my husband hasn't cooked a single meal in 3 years." The other friend laughed. "You're complaining about a man who comes home and cooks for you?" Emily smiled politely, but something about that sentence stayed with her. That evening, the apartment felt unusually quiet. Daniel was sitting on the couch scrolling through his phone. He seemed normal, but something about his energy felt different. Later, Emily noticed something small. When Daniel cooked, he had started asking more questions. "Is this okay? Did I add too much salt? Should I do it this way?" The kind of questions people ask when they're no longer sure if they're doing something right anymore. A few nights later, Daniel walked into the kitchen, opened the cabinet, and pulled out a pan. For a moment, he just stood there holding it. Then, he slowly put the pan back. Instead, he picked up his phone and ordered takeout. Emily watched from the living room, and suddenly a thought crossed her mind that made her uncomfortable. Had Daniel stopped cooking because nothing he did ever seemed good enough for her anymore? That thought stayed with her long after Daniel had fallen asleep that night. Later, while scrolling through her phone, Emily came across an old photo. It was from years ago, the night she had the flu. Daniel standing outside her door holding a bag of soup, smiling proudly like he had just accomplished something important. Emily stared at the photo longer than she meant to. The man in that picture was the same man quietly sitting across from her every evening. Daniel hadn't stopped trying. She had simply stopped noticing. The next evening, Emily came home earlier than usual. Daniel was on the couch with Milo. For the first time in a long time, Emily walked into the kitchen and started cooking. It didn't go perfectly. She burned a piece of garlic, spilled sauce on the stove, and suddenly she remembered something Daniel had once said, jokingly. "I'm not trying to cook perfectly," he had laughed. "I just like making things for you." For the first time in a long time, Emily felt something soften inside her chest. After dinner, they went for a short walk, the kind couples take when they don't really have a destination. Streetlights glowing softly above them. For a few minutes, they walked quietly. Then Emily reached for Daniel's hand. He looked slightly surprised. "Everything okay?" he asked. Emily nodded. "Yes." And for a moment, she simply held his hand the way she used to years ago. Not because something was wrong, but because something had quietly shifted. Because she finally understood something she hadn't seen before. Love rarely disappears because people stop caring. More often it fades beneath thousands of small moments where appreciation slowly disappears. Because flaws are easy to notice. But effort requires attention. And attention is something long relationships slowly forget to give. So tonight, before pointing out something someone you love did wrong, pause for a moment. Look at them carefully. And ask yourself something simple. Are you seeing their imperfections or the quiet ways they are still trying? Because one day, the things you complain about today might be the things you miss the most. If someone came to your mind while hearing this story, share it with them. Sometimes love doesn't need to be fixed. It just needs to be noticed again.